Hi everyone and welcome to this first part of a small series of mlre tutorials. This video will focus on how to navigate around the user interface, give you a basic idea of what you can do with the script and how to get there. For those who aren't already familiar with the script, mlre is an extended version of mlr for norms. It's a 6-track sampler that allows you to manipulate audio in different ways. As mentioned before, mlre is a 6-track sampler, and the way the grid is organized is that you'll find the 6 tracks on the rows 2 to 7. The top row is what we refer to as the grid navigation, and the bottom row does different things depending on which page you are. Now generally you can access the 7 different pages either with a key directly or with a key combo. Now, the keys that you'll need for key combos are going to be Alt, you'll use that quite often, Mod also, and the key in the middle, the Q key is also used for key combos. Pressing and holding the Q key gives you access to the key quantization menu. I'll talk about that a bit later. Now, how to access pages. The first 4 keys on the left corner gives you access to the rect page, the cut page, transpose page, the LFO page. If you tap it a second time, you gain access to the envelope page, and then you have the other 2 pages will be the macro page. To get there, you need to hold Mod and tap Q. That's the macro page. And the tape page, you hold Alt and then tap Q. That's how you gain access to the tape page. These 8 keys in the middle, these are the macro slots. The macro slots can be populated with different types of macros. For example, patterns, snapshots, and punch-in events. There are actually 2 rows that you can access with this key here. That's another modifier key, the secondary view. So if you press and hold it, you gain access to the second row of these macro slots. As I mentioned before, you can populate them with whatever type of macros you like. What I'm going to do next, I'm going to give you a rundown of the different pages, what they do, and talk a bit about the user interface. I won't go in depth with all pages. Some are more extensive than others. So the record page, the macro page, and the tape page will be covered in depth in separate videos. One thing you might have noticed is that whether you are on the rec, the cut, or the transpose page, the screen doesn't change. This is what is referred to as the main view. All other pages, so the LFO and envelope page, as well as the macro and tape page, have their own separate screens and user interfaces. So you can do a lot of things on the record page. However, it's the only place where you can start and stop a recording from, hence the name. The rightmost keys here can start and stop a recording, or better, activate and inactivate a recording. If a track is not playing, nothing will be recorded into, so recording is always tied together with track playback. The key next to it is the ARM key for one-shot recording. If it's armed and the incoming audio signal passes a threshold, then recording will start and it will cycle through the size of the loop and then stop again. There are different modes of one-shot recording. There are also ways how you can completely disengage recording for specific tracks. Those are all things I'm going to cover in a separate video about the record page and recording in general. On the left side, you can start and stop a track by pressing the play key. The play key reacts to starting and stopping a bit differently depending on your track launch settings. So if we go to track launch, we can see it's currently set to manual. That means as soon as you press it, it will start, and as soon as you stop it, it will stop. Also, it remembers the position where it last was. So when you stop it, it will just resume playback from where it was last. You can set track launch to beat or bar to quantize the start and stop to the system clock. To give you a bit of an idea, I'm going to activate quantization, key quantization. So you press and hold Q, and then you can dial in the quantization value that you need. If I set it to 1/8, that means every 8th note it's quantized to 8th notes. So generally all key presses are quantized to the system clock according to your key quantization settings. So when track launch is set to beat, this means that when I press the play key, it will wait until the next beat starts and then will start playback. If you look at the Q key, it's flashing right now. That means it will show you a metronome. Now the bright flash, that's going to be the downbeat. That depends on the time signature, and the flashes in between, those are the beats in between. So when I press play, it's going to wait until the next beat and then start playback. So it's always synced to the system clock. You might have noticed that when it's track launch is set to anything else but manual, it will always start at the first position. If you set it to bar, it will wait until the downbeat and then it will start. What else you can do is you can change the track speed. You can hear nicely how rate slew has an effect. If it's set to 0, you have immediate jumps. You can do like a drastic tape stop effect and stop it. What you can also do is change direction. So you can play your in reverse or not reverse. There are a few nifty key combos that you can do on the rec page. For example, you can enable track warble by holding Alt and pressing the key adjacent to the reverse key. You can see it's slightly lit. That means track warble is now on. If you hold this key, you can actually dial in the amount and the intensity of the warble. So when the track is playing, you can hear the effect of the warble. Let me turn it off again. Another thing you can do is you can randomize specific track settings. If you hold the Alt key and press the center speed key, you can randomize things like speed, subloops, filter cutoff, pan position, level. I'll talk about those randomization when we go through the rec page in detail. One thing you might have noticed is when a track is playing back, you can see the playhead moving along the bottom row. This is the playhead position of the currently focused track. Now, depending which track is focused, you will see it or not. So let's say start playback for track 1. I can see the playhead for track 1, and here there's nothing playing, so I can't see anything. On the cut page, you can see everything simultaneously. So any currently playing track that's displayed on the cut page. Same as on the focused playhead row, you can do things with the playhead position. For example, if you press a key within the track row, you will jump to that current position. If you press a key, hold the second one and release it, you will make a loop. Clear a loop by pressing another position, or you can clear all loops and reset playback by holding Alt and pressing Mod, and they will all jump to the first position. You can start playback by pressing any key. You can stop playback again by holding Alt and pressing any key within the track row. You can stop all currently playing tracks by holding Mod and pressing the secondary key. It will stop all tracks and any playing patterns. Then it stops. Now's a good time to show what the different play modes are. So when it's set to loop, it will just loop back when it reaches the end of the track, and then it starts back. When it's set to one shot, it will stop as soon as it reaches the end. If it's set to gate, it will start playback when you press a key, and it will stop playback when you release a key. No matter whether you have loop, one shot or gate, subloops or making a loop within a track will always stick. So even if it's set to one shot, it will just continue looping. So this only applies when it reaches the end of a unlooped track. If you have an arc, you can change the loop position with the arc encoder. You can also change the size of a loop. And scrub around. You can stop or undo a loop by holding Alt and turning the second encoder, and you can restart the loop that you had before just by touching the encoder. More about arc later on. The bottom row on the cut page is the focused view of the transpose page. So if we go to the transpose page, you can see two center columns and then some blank space over here. These are the transposition steps. So if I just go here to transpose, you can see how I can transpose a track up and down depending on the currently set scale. So right now it's set to Dorian. There are different scales that you can choose from, and according to that scale I will have major second, minor third, perfect fourth, perfect fifth, major sixth, minor seventh, and then an octave, and downwards accordingly. So these are the transposition steps for all 6 tracks, and down here you have the cut view of the currently focused track, so the playhead. You can treat it the same as on the rec page. It would be, in this case, track 3. So you can hear how it's being pitched up. By pitching something up, you change the rate of the playhead. So there's no time stretching algorithm or anything. You're just speeding it up or slowing it down. The 2 center keys allow you to do some different things in combination with modify keys. So if you hold Alt and press it, you stop playback. If you hold Mod, you can go up an octave, another one, or down. This is the equivalent to changing the octave on the rec page. Okay, so let's move over to the modulation pages, which would be the LFO page and the MLO page. So on the LFO page, you have 6 LFOs, which can be assigned to, freely to any of the 6 tracks and to one of the 7 available parameters. So how to select an LFO? You can do it either by pressing one of these keys or by turning encoder 1. If you have an ARC, you can also turn encoder number 4 to select an LFO. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to map LFO 1 to the pan position of track 3. So I select my LFO, I press and hold the track that I want, so that'll be 1, 2, 3, and here we have different destinations. So volume, pan, the overdub level, the transpose steps, detune, rate slew, and the cutoff. So if I want to set it to the pan, I just press and hold track 3 and pan. That means now when the LFO is turned on, it will control the pan position of the corresponding track. There are different things that you can set on the user interface. So again, here you can cycle between the 3 pages with K2 and K3, and you can use the encoders to change the corresponding parameters. You can set the depth either via grid, just by pressing any key within the 2nd and the 16th. So that would be 0, that would be 100%, and it's just scaled linearly through. Or you can just do it by turning the encoder. If you have an ARC, the first encoder would be the depth, the second one would be the offset. Then we have the third one, that would be the speed, so you can change the rate of the current LFO, and this is to select the LFO. Regarding rate, you have 2 different modes. Either it's clocked, so clocked to the system clock, or free, so you can set it in seconds. Just going to leave it clocked for now, and select a shape. You can choose between sine, triangle, square, random, a ramp up and ramp down, and you can change the phase at the starting point where within the wave it will actually start. So I'm just going to leave it to sine. Going to set depth to 40%, and I'm going to start the LFO. You can see how the key is flashing. It's flashing at the corresponding rate. So if I increase the rate, you will see how it flashes faster. If I decrease it, it will go slower. So you can't hear anything because there's nothing playing. So let me go to track number 3, play back, and now you can hear how it's sweeping between left and right. Now, if I set the depth more, that will be more extreme. It will be really swooshing back and forth. Just make the rate a bit slower so you can hear it a bit better. If you change the offset, it will skew it to more to the right and more to the left. So just going to reduce depth a bit, set it to 50, and then go more to one side, then more to the other side. You can change whether the LFOs are started just immediately or synced to the system clock at the next beat or the next bar. So when this is off, it means it will just start immediately as soon as you press it. If it's mid-bright, it will start at the next beat. If it's real bright, it will start the next bar. So you can actually sync LFOs on and off with your system clock. Again, you have 6 at your disposal. You can assign them to whatever you want. For example, I'm going to assign the LFO number 2 again to track 3, but this time it's going to be cut off, a lower depth. Let's see how this sounds. So I'm offsetting it to the low pass side of the DJ filter. If we just go and quickly have a look, you can see how it's moving along there. let's just offset it to the other direction. Exactly. If you want to unassign an LFO, you just select the LFO that you have and then press this key here. That will unassign it. So you can assign it to anything else. Just going to do that for both. Another way of modulating is with the envelopes. So you have one envelope per track which can control the volume of the track. That's the only destination available. So when you're on the envelope page, so you press the LFO key a second time, that gets you to the envelope page. You can set the attack, decay, sustain, release parameters of the ADSR envelope. Just going to dial something in, and you switch pages again with K2 and K3. Just drop the sustain level a bit and add a bit more release. As you can see, you can just set the same values with the encoders of the ARC. The next page leads you to the max and the minimum volume. So the max volume will be when it reaches the peak, where will it stick around, and the minimum volume is when it's totally off, where will it be? So right now it's set to 100% and 0%. That means it will go to the maximum volume and then down to the absolute silence. Now, let me go to envelope number 3. Okay, so when I turn it on, it's going to go straight down to the minimum volume. So it's going to be off. If I set this to like 20%, it's going to be just quieter. So now it's off. And how do you actually play the envelope? You can either do it on this page, like by pressing the gate key. So if you press this key, it will be gate on, and if you release it, will be gate off. So now it's going up to the attack, decay, that's a sustain. When I let it go, release. You can record these things into patterns, and you don't necessarily have to play them here, because the gate on and gate off also work on the cut page or in any cut view of the playhead. So when I'm going to press a key here, it's going to go up, slowly down, sustain volume. When I release a key, gradually decay and turn off. Okay, so let us move over to the macro page. Again, you press mod and tap Q, and that leads you to the macro page. What you can do here is you can set up different you can set up the macro slots, and you can set up the performance macros. Again, I will dig in deep in a separate video, but just for now, to give you an overview, what we can do here is that you can, for example, set up your macro slots. So these would be your macro slots. You have 3 macro types to choose from. You have patterns, you have snapshots, and you have punch-in events. Again, you have 2 macro rows. So you have the main row, and then you have a secondary row, and you can assign different type of macros to the different slots. You do this by holding this key up here. So this would assign the type of macros to your macro slots to the main one. So currently I have the first 4 are patterns. So patterns 1 to 4 are going to be up here. And then I have snapshots 5, 6, 7, and 8 over here. I could say I want these 2 to be snapshots and the last 2 to be punch-in events. Like I said, you can configure it as you wish. The key below leads you to the secondary row, so that's equivalent as this one here. Currently, they're all set to punch-ins, But again, here you can do whatever you want. You can have them set to patterns or snapshots. That's up to you. These down here, they only work if you have a grid 0, so the big one. On the grid 0, you have 2 navigation rows. So the top row would be here, and the second row would be these 2 here. So on the grid 0, you have effectively 2 times 8 macro slots that you can populate differently. In any case, you always have 8 of each available. So you have 8 patterns, 8 snapshots, and 8 punch-in effects. If this key is deselected, you have access to all of them simultaneously. So here you can start and record your patterns. You can enable your punch-ins, and you can save or trigger your snapshots. I'll just give a very, very brief demonstration in a second. If this key is pressed, you can set up the actual patterns. So patterns can be synced to the system clock. So by default, they're not synced. And if you want to sync them, then you just tap this key here, and then you have the meter and the length that you can set up. So that means now it will be the equivalent of 4 bars at 4/4, and I can record a pattern into one of these pattern slots, and it will be synced to the clock. Just to very, very briefly demonstrate it, I'm just going over here and I'll record something. So now I'm going to now it's just recorded those 4 bars and is playing back 4 bars according to system clock. Okay. So toggle this on and off to access the patterns. You can select a pattern with the encoder or either one of these 2 keys up here to put them in focus. This section over here is for the P macros. What is a P macro? It is stands short for performance macro, and you have it's like a model matrix for different parameters. That means you have 4 P macros in total. Those are like 4 encoders that will do different things. And for each one, you can set up for all 6 tracks, 6 different parameters, and for all 6 LFOs, 2 different parameters. So, for example, P macro number 1 right now has cutoff of track 1 is set to 31%, of track 2 27%, and the filter Q -11%, and so on and so forth. On the next page, we have volume and pan, then we have detune and track slew, rate slew, and here we have the LFO depth and rate for the LFOs 1 to 6. So what happens is you can set these up. They're sort of like macro controls for many parameters at the same time. So, for example, right now, here I have for performance macro 1, cutoff at 31, and let's go to track 3. I've got cutoff at 33. Let's go in the other direction just to give you an idea. So when you have these tracks playing, I can go into P macro mode by holding K1. If you have an ARC in your edition, you just hold the key and you have your macro controls. So right now macro 1 is set up that when I turn the encoder clockwise, it will increase the cutoff value for track 1 and decrease it for track 2. So this one's going to go in high pass and this one in low pass. When I release or exit the P macro mode, it just goes back to its initial settings. So it's never permanent, it's always temporary. So hold K1. Now I'm doing the opposite. release, it just goes back. On the arc, yeah, exactly. I'm going to cover that in depth in the video about the macro page. So I'm briefly going to demonstrate the other two macros types, the snapshots and the punch-in. So a snapshot, in essence, can save all the event types at once, and you can recall them by pressing the according snapshot key. So right now I have these 4 keys set up as snapshots, so snapshot 5 to 8. Let me set something up. So now I have this snapshot saved, that it's basically going to be the rate, the playback setting, whether it's going back or forth, the record state, the LFO state, whether it's a loop or not, and when I press it, it will recall it. So if I make a change, let's say I want a loop here, I want a loop here, I want this to go fast and this in reverse, I'm going to save that. So now I go back to this setting and you can quantize the snapshot launch in the quantize settings. So if you go to the second page, you can say whether it's going to be manual, that means immediately, or according to your key quantization, at the next beat or the next bar. Here again, you can do the same thing for splice launch. We'll talk about that on the tape page. So here, snapshot launch is always going to be quantized to the, in my case, the next beat. You can change something. And that one. I use this a lot to transition from different parts of a musical piece. Punch-in effects are momentarily, punch-in events are momentarily applied. So it's very similar to snapshot. The difference is that you only have some very specific single events that you need to record. So I'm going to demonstrate that here. Right now I have a punch-in event that's going to lock the playback to this loop here. So every time I press it, it just goes over there and plays it. And you can do this for any type of event. Again, I'll go in depth when we go through the macro page. Okay, what I want to show you next is the tape page. Again, hold Alt and press Q to get there. This is where all the audio is set up, where routings are done. It's quite extensive. There's quite a lot going on here, so I'll cover that in another video. I'm just going to briefly show you its main functions to get you started. For that, I'm going to load a clean slate. So just load the script again and go over to the tape page. So the tape concept of mlre is that each track has 50 seconds of virtual tape to its disposal. So that's 57 seconds of the soft cut buffer. You can organize it how you want. The limitation is the first 57 seconds, and second, you have 8 different splices so to organize your audio. You can set the length of these splices to whatever you want and to wherever you want within those 57 seconds of buffer. So you need to be a bit careful on when preparing a set or setting up your recording buffers. So how do you change the length and how do you set a splice? You can see these are the splice keys. When you press one, you sort of focus that splice and it will show you whatever is inside that splice. The bright ones means that's the active splice. That means that's whatever is actually playing back. So currently there's nothing inside, so we're not hearing anything. Let me just load a sample to give you an idea. So I'm going to load a drum beat here, and I'm going to load in let's go over to the rat cycle. Okay, so here I have this sample loaded in. You can see it's 16 seconds long. You can check the info by pressing this key here. It will show its length and it will show you the name. The one that I loaded up earlier is 5.52 and this one is 16 seconds long. That's when you load samples. They're sort of automatically set from start to the end. If you just want to record things, you can set up the length of whatever splice you want to different lengths. So if you turn E2, you can go through from 1 to these 57 seconds. So that would be the maximum length. 1 second is sort of the shortest that you can choose here. However, you can also manually change the length, and you do this by holding K1 and moving encoder 3. So that's how you change the length. If you have an arc, you can also move the encoder 3, yes. That's a start point, sorry. That's how you change the start point. The length is encoder 4. So check how long it is. It's going to set it to 7.5 seconds. Here you go. So I've got 7.5 seconds here. The next one is set to 4 seconds. You can see there's a slight overlap of this one and the other one. If you want to set all consecutive splices to the same as the first one, you go over to Format, arrow. So that's going to be Format all consecutive splices to what you have here. We'll ask you, you confirm, yes. It says splice 8 is too long. That means you can't fit 8 7-second splices in 57 seconds. So it will have resized 1 to 7 to those 7.5 seconds. And the 8th one is just whatever it was before. So that's a way of sort of quickly setting up your splices. If you want to load a splice, you need to hold Alt and then hold the corresponding splice. So just for demonstration purposes, I'm going to load a second splice in here. You can see that this one is sort of bleeding over into the second splice. Now, if you record, you need to be careful not to overwrite this. So you probably want to set the start point after the first splice. However, if you're just loading, you can ignore this. It will automatically set the start point to the end of the previous splice. So let's go to load. Just going to load some loop. Here we go. And you can see that the start point is now at the end of the previous splice, and the length is set to the length that the actual audio file is. So this is the splice 1 playing back. If I want to load the other one, I just hold Alt and you can switch between the different splices. You can record splice changes into patterns. You can have active splices saved as snapshots. You can change splices with punch-in effects. So there's also a lot going on. A lot of things that you can customize and do. Okay. I think that covers most of it for now. If you go again over here, this key, that will show you just sort of an overview of how much space you have actually left. here you can set up the tempo mappings. So you hold Alt and you can cycle through the different tempo mappings. If you press Mod, you can switch between the main buffer and the temporary buffer, or the main tape and temporary tape. If you press these keys, you can turn the left input or routing of the left input to track 1 on and off, and the right input to track 1 on and off. There's no stereo, so if you have both on, it's basically merging both inputs to the same track. Then over here, you can set the sends for track 5 and 6. So in essence, you can send tracks 1 to 4 to track 5, and you can send tracks 1 to 5 to track 6. Let me just briefly show you how to set up a send and return track. So I'm going to use track 6 as a as destination. I'm just going to set it to 1 second length, so that will be this playing back. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take this track 2, I'm going to send it to track 6. I'm going to set the send amount to 32%, and when this track plays back, you're not hearing anything because record needs to be engaged. So when record is on, we're routing this audio into this track and it's recording. Now if you set the dub level, that's similar to the feedback of a delay. You just if you change the length, and now you have an endless loop. Okay. This key down here, the last one, that leads you to the preset loading page. Here it will display all the presets that you have saved under your presets. So anything that you have here will also be visible here. And there are 2 ways you can load them. If you press preset, it will load the whole preset. So here I have the whole preset loaded with all my track settings and everything. Snapshots and macros, they're all going to be there. What you can also do is slightly load them, so that will load them in the background, and you can transition from one track to the other pretty seamlessly. Again, I'm going to cover this later in another video. So thanks for joining, and if you have any questions, just post them on the mlre thread online. Enjoy.